Your Creative Push, episode 121.
I tried it. Maybe it didn't go that way, but hey, at least I tried it, and I'm not going to have that regret ever in my life.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Steven Silver. Steven was born in London and aspired to be a professional artist his entire life. Knowing that drawing would be his vocation, he got his professional start in 1992, drawing caricatures at SeaWorld in San Diego. He has designed characters for Disney television animation, Sony feature animation, and Nickelodeon animation, designing the style of the shows such as Kim Possible, Danny Phantom, Kevin Smith's Clerks, the animated series, and many more. And he is the author and artist of 7 self-published books on the art of sketching, character design, caricature drawing, and life drawing. And he's also the owner of Silver Drawing Academy, an art school located in Los Angeles, California. Steven, thank you so much for coming on the show. I was wondering if maybe you could start out by telling me what I missed in that intro and maybe give us a peek into your personal life.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on here. And I guess just in regards to that intro is just maybe that I was just always a cartoonist at heart. I think when I was around 6 years old, I was born in England, and I was looking out my bedroom window and I found an artist's sketchbook laying in my backyard. I didn't know what it was at the time, and I went downstairs and picked it up, and it had all these portraits and landscapes in it, and I carried it around with me everywhere I went. And from there, I was just always drawing. So it was something that I just sort of like followed my gut and my heart. I was very bad in school. I don't have that in my bio, horrible student. But I was, and I was just, funnily enough, just found a bunch of report cards that my mom had given to me a couple years ago as I was cleaning out and looking through all my report cards, and just nothing but D's and F's, and always the constant lacks concentration, needs to improve, and he's good at art though. That was always the thing, shows some talent. So that my mind was always sort of there and going in that direction.
So you knew right away, and it was like off to the races almost and forgetting everything else?
It was, really it was like I didn't know what it meant, and nor did my parents know what it meant to, what are we going to do with this art? Artists don't make a living. Artists, you can't make a career. Have a backup plan. You got to go to school. You got to have that degree. And there was always that sort of talk. And for me, not knowing what really that the art vocation was. I saw artists. I love watching animation. I love watching, I like looking at comic books. I like Batman. I like Superman. But as far as going beyond that, I just didn't know what it meant to even have an art career. I never went to art school just because my parents didn't know. And again, I didn't know what do you do in art school? And plus at that point couldn't even afford it. There was, paying the 40 to 60 grand a year, whatever it was never going to happen, and it wasn't something I was just going to get a scholarship from out of high school.
Yeah, that's really inspiring, because I think, I know that there's a lot of younger people that listen to this podcast too that are, amazing artists as well, that post their stuff on Instagram and just really talented stuff. And not only that, but older people, people that have already kind of, started on their quote journey or whatever, that's not creative, but just the fact that you don't need to go to school, you don't need that traditional sense of education as far as art is concerned to pursue your dreams and to continue to work on your craft.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I guess I knew something when I was young. And the thing that I knew when I was younger is that all that anyone would care about, and it still holds true today, and I tell a lot of my students the same thing, all that matters is how well you draw. It comes down to your skill level. So at that moment, I knew that it's not going to be about a degree. It's not going to be about showing a piece of paper saying that I studied here and went there. It was all came down to my portfolio and what was in my portfolio. And I think I learned that lesson. I don't know how, but I learned that at a very young age and always believed in that. So that was always my pursuit. And I didn't feel that I had to go to school in order to do that. I felt I had to constantly be passionate and work towards it and be excited about art, which I was. Like Mad Magazine was my real break into art. When I found Mad Magazine when I was in high school, that sort of like, oh my God, this is it. This became that pinnacle of what I wanted to do. And I saw the cartoons and then realized, man, I just got to get better at drawing. I got to get better at drawing caricatures. I got to get better at drawing people. And then I went to San Diego Comic-Con and I met my hero there, this guy named Mort Drucker, who drew for Mad Magazine, and I showed him my portfolio. I was always showing my stuff around. I always had a confidence. Like, even though I was horrible in my artwork, I was always just prepared to show people and take criticism and not let that, not shy away from that. And he told me, just learn how to draw folds, learn how to observe the human figure, learn how to draw the human figure. And from that point, I started taking figure drawing classes, and was doing that. And I think that became a driving force just to help me improve. So it's that self-discipline, which was vital. To not have to wait for someone else to give me that boost and say, hey, do this assignment or work on that. It was always self-motivated. Again, still not knowing what profession I could have as a cartoonist, or what it really meant, but always asking questions, was a huge thing for me.
Absolutely. I love that mentality, and also that, like you said, the brazen kind of brave, just showing your work no matter what to receive that criticism. Because if you don't show it, if you don't share it, then how are you going to get that kind of feedback? What kind of advice would you give to somebody who doesn't have that, like kind of intrinsic inside of them, like that they're just willing to share their work, even if they don't think that they're at the point where they're proud of their work yet? What kind of advice would you give to them to push through that so that they are able to receive that kind of a feedback and improve?
Yeah, I think it's just really a matter of just being brave in the sense, knowing what it is that your intention is for your career. I think if you just want to be a hobbyist and you just want to do this for fun, then hey, don't feel that you need to show it to people because you're just doing it for fun. But I think it's just, you have to step over that threshold and say, if I want to work in this career, in this field, I need to have a confidence. I'm going to be working with directors all the time. I'm going to be working with producers. I'm going to be working with other artists and team members. And there's going to be that constant clients from all different aspects. You just need to just build up that confidence. And something that I would say is if you're shy doing that, put yourself out there by even joining like a Toastmasters or doing something out of your comfort zone and say, I hate getting in front of people, but you got to do it. And for me, and know what your fears are. My one of the greatest lessons I learned in life was from my dad, who I remember when I wanted to set up a caricature concession at a shopping mall during Christmas, and I was around 18 years old at the time, and I was afraid. This was at the time I wasn't public speaking. I wasn't doing any of this sort of thing, and I was afraid to talk to the management. Oh my God, these guys wear suits and they're management people, and how do you approach them? And I remember just laying on the couch, and I was going through this in my head, creating this crazy story in my head. And my dad said, what's your biggest fear? What are you afraid of? And I said, well, I'd hate to be stabbed. And I would hate, and I would hate to drown. I think that would be a horrible death. And he said, when you go into that meeting today, are they going to stab you? No. Are they going to drown you? No. The worst thing they're going to say is no. And when you realize that that's the worst that anyone will ever say to you is no, then you can just start to relax a bit. And he was absolutely right. And that's what I've realized through my whole life is all you can ever do is ask. And through asking, things, happen. If you don't ask, nothing can happen. And I think it's having that awareness of that. And that's what sort of like opened up the door for me. And I say, so what? So they said, no, big deal. I'm going to move on to the next thing and try something else and do something different and hopefully get that yes. And that's what happened when showing my work. The worst thing they're going to do is tell me, it's not so great and you need to work on this and this. But again, it's that openness. You just got to be open to it. I look at a lot of portfolios all the time where people do show it to me and I give them advice, but I see them all of a sudden wondering, their eyes go off into the distance and I can see they're not really listening or paying attention. Otherwise they go, yep, and they're doing that sort of thing. And I'd say to anyone, just don't do that. Just be open, especially if you want to ask a professional. And one thing I would suggest is stop showing your parents your artwork at a young age. I stopped when I was around 18 because they always told me how great it was, how brilliant. And that's the same thing would happen with friends. Just don't rely on your friends' opinions because they're your friends. They're going to tell you your artwork's awesome and how great you are. So go to conventions. Show up with your portfolio, go to places where you know professional artists are going to be, and more so professionals that work in the career that you want to work in, and really be open and show them, and just know that they're not going to bite you, that they were afraid too at one point. And that's really what it comes down to, is just being open to that risk taking.
Dude, you nailed it. And I think that for a lot of people that, who are afraid of that, getting that no, it's almost like any artist or any creative type, when you're putting yourself out there and trying to, get something out of it, when you do ask, like you said, that's so important to ask, but it's almost like you have to collect a bunch of no's before you start to get yeses. So it's almost like you should be looking to get no's, and then exactly like you said, to get something out of those no's, to learn something from the no, as opposed to just getting a rejection and then as soon as they say no, just, like you said, the eyes wandering or moving on to the next thing immediately. Try to learn something from it and take a lesson from it, so that it almost becomes a valuable no that you can check off in your book as another no, but here's what I learned that's going to get me closer to a yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, unfortunately, in our society, we've just been raised to believe that no is such a negative thing, or we're told about, failure. Oh my God, you failed, and it's just like you didn't win, you lost, and it becomes this thing in the mind that, oh my God, how are people going to perceive me? And then it becomes this perception. And I think, we learn through these experiences, and every time you try, you just get one step closer. And just recently I was just watching, on the news. I'm just, just glued to the news these days. But, they had this, thing where, where it's on all the headlines, Bernie Sanders failed at this one thing, and I'm not necessarily supportive of this guy, but what I do love is the fact that this guy tried. And the fact that it's planted, he failed. No, you know what? This guy tried and it didn't get accepted, and, you got to move on. And I think it's that connotation where people are so afraid of that. And I've always embraced failure. I don't even like the word failure. I never look at it. It's like, hey, I didn't fail at it. I tried and it didn't work out. So what? That just leads me to try something new and something just a little different now, and not get, George Lucas had mentioned one time about people, how they just get stuck in the mud. It's just like they're told something, they're told that no, and that something happens, and they just stay there, and it becomes, oh no, I failed, I'm no good. And they plant themselves there, and they don't try to find that stick and just try to pull themselves out, and then try and find their other way around some sort of obstacle. And I think if you're open to that and not afraid, and I think that's what's driven me and gets me to what I do and trying so many things, is failure is just it's a beautiful word in the human dictionary. All right? It's another way just to try. Is that all? That's all it ever becomes to me. Is that trying? I'm going to try again. I'm going to try something different.
Yeah, it's not an end point. It's just a stepping stone.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've talked a little bit about education and art education. Can you talk a little bit about the Silver Drawing Academy?
Yeah, so I've been teaching. I think one of the things in life that I've always been trying to find for myself is trying to find what is my purpose in life. And that, I don't know where that comes from. I do personally believe in reincarnation. I think that I've been here before 1,000 times, and I've learned things along the way. And why do things come to me? Why am I drawn to certain things and not drawn to other things? And so I was always seeking, what is my purpose in life, even as an artist? And I discovered that my true purpose in life was just to inspire and encourage other artists to find their journey along the way. And through that, I've always been helping people, even at a youngest age, just trying to guide people, trying to guide fellow artists. And through that experience, I started teaching, and I was teaching for other people, and I was doing that, been doing it for a long time now, over, 20 years. And then I decided just one time, as I was teaching at these other schools, I was teaching at a school called Cal Arts for a little bit. I was teaching at a bunch of other different local schools, different art programs, and thought, there's a lot of little politics involved and all these other things, or even the environment wasn't conducive to what I felt a drawing environment should be, or a structure, and the grading system. I didn't like the grading system. You have to grade these guys. And I knew that everyone was at a different level. So then I just thought, again, it came down to the try for me. And I realized, hey, you know what? Why not just open up my own space and do my own thing? The worst thing that I have to do is just pay for rent and promote it. Mm-hmm. Those became those two challenging aspects, where if I can cover my rent costs and I can promote it well enough just to let people know that it exists, that's all I need to do. And so that's what I did. And I felt I love the idea of having things physical and touching things. I could touch the wall. I got the desks, and it's not just money sort of that I have that's sitting in some bank account or in some, a share of some sort, where that's why I pulled money out of some money that I had saved and thought I'm going to put it towards and make something and build something. And that was my philosophy. That you've heard that saying, if you build it, they will come. And I truly believed in that. So I built it, and they came. And it's been just a really terrific thing that I've done in my life, an accomplishment that I'm proud of. And I know that as I'm moving forward in my career, the thing that drives me more and more now is just the teaching. I, in all honesty, I enjoy that more than working for other people, working for the studios, doing design work for people. I'm more engaged. I love people who are passionate. And when you open up your own school, there's no degree. It's you're coming because you're passionate and you want to be there. When I was teaching at some of these art schools, you get kids thrown into these classes who are just doing it just to make the grade, just to get through. So you get kids who are falling asleep. They're not enthusiastic. They don't care as much. They just want the degree. They don't care about the lesson plan sometimes. And that's what I love about doing it this way. I'm just grabbing students, and now I just do it through an application process where I'm grabbing students who are gung-ho. And those are the students that I always get. And I only teach 5 students at a time, and I get those students in the class and they're ready to roll. And I love that.
Yeah, it's funny. When I went to college, it was exactly like you said. There were some classes that I enjoyed, and then there was others that it was just like, get me through this so I can check it off and then finally get that piece of paper at the end. It wasn't about the experience of actually, learning and becoming, and until actually I took writing courses my senior year of college. And that's actually what it was. One teacher that got me inspired and told me that I had, potential as a writer, and I was a computer science major. So it took until then for me to actually kind of find that passion that has, lasted until now.
Wow. Yeah. So again, it comes down to the experience. You had to go through that. And that's why I believe in that journey. You had to go through all those other classes to eventually get to that point, to find that teacher to lead you to that next place. And that's all it takes sometimes. I think, again, that constant, like, you didn't give up. You didn't just quit college. You didn't just walk away. You found something else. So it's great.
Exactly. And I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the whole reincarnation thing, about the whole, figuring out what kind of resonates with you in this life, where you're just like, why am I interested? Like, why do I love space, outer space? Like, why is that interesting to me? Why is, writing interesting to me? And it's like, I think you have to kind of dabble in a lot of different things, and that's what creativity allows you to do, especially once you've picked, like we were talking about before, like a path, like a path that has nothing to do with what you're interested in. If you perhaps dread going to work, well, you got to spend your free time doing stuff that you enjoy, so that you can get something out of this life and maybe pivot and figure something else out.
Absolutely. It's the experimentation, it's the exploring that one has to do, where you can't just, it's even just using one sort of medium when you're doing art. It's like, well, I did that. Maybe that's not the best thing. Let me try something else. And it's that constant experimentation, where until you do that, how are you ever going to know yeah, what it is that you do like or don't like. You have to try those things. And I think I've done that in so many different levels where, yeah, I thought, I want to play music, I'm drawn to it, and I try it, and I try and realize, man, this isn't for me. Or I want to, whatever it may be, I want to write, and I tried that. Nah, it's just not my thing. And I want to do oil painting. I tried, I do it long enough and realize, nah, it's just not my thing. And eventually it wound down to the cartooning, and that's caricature, and that's what became my strength and my true. And I realized I kept looking all the time. And I think that, and also with the teaching, like, I think if something keeps popping in your head all the time, or when you're just taking a stroll, when you're walking, when you're driving, when you go this place, that place, and your subconscious is thinking about a specific subject or a way to make it better or improve upon something, then I think that's the thing you got to keep following through with, because it feels natural. And I think a lot of people are trying to get into an area in their life that's just not natural, and they keep resisting it. And sometimes they're chasing it for the wrong reasons. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's because of outside, people, their parents, grandparents, their other people's expectations of what they expect of that person. And there's these other elements, and I think so that's what gears people in this whole other direction, as opposed to, what are you thinking about the most? What do you find yourself doing on your spare time, dabbling in with creativity? Is it writing? Do you want to play that music? And it's not that, and I don't put that pressure on yourself that you got to be a famous artist, a famous musician. And I think it's just, sometimes, hey, your lot in life is going to be, you might be a manager somewhere, and that's going to be it. But hey, are you spending your free time on your weekends and anything, doing that thing that you love? Maybe that's what it's going to end up being, and just, I think, be open to that.
You kind of took the words right out of my mouth, and I'm going to say it again, but I say it all the time on the podcast, and my listeners are probably rolling their eyes now because I say it all the time. But, you get that thing, like you were saying, that's, stuck in your head, and it's like, hey, do this, or hey, pursue this. It's like you keep almost pushing it away because of whatever fears that hold you back from doing it. But it's going to be stuck in your head, especially if it keeps coming up. It's going to be stuck in your head until you die unless you do it. And kind of going along with, what we were saying about, putting yourself out there and getting rejected. Like you were saying, like if it's oil painting, or if it's singing, or if it's writing, or whatever it may be, you dabble in them, and it's like they're auditioning for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I'll mention one of the things that really stuck with me in my life, and I probably read this article maybe been 5, 6 or more years ago, but it was, and anyone can look it up. You could just research it if it's the 5 top regrets of the dying, that was put together by all these nurses from the hospice. And they wrote, and so these people have listened to hundreds of people and their regrets on their deathbed as these people are about to die. And the number one thing that people had, one of the regrets was that not only just listening to what other people say instead of, doing it because they want to do it, but also just one of the regrets of just not doing, just what they wanted to, and worrying so much about future outcomes. And they wish that they would have just done what they wanted, to do, and not been so afraid, and not been so afraid of failure in their lives. And if this is a constant thing that all these people are saying, to me, there's a science behind that. And there's a reality. And I think it's, I think you don't want those regrets that, God, why didn't I try without you fill in the blank? I'd rather, just live this life of just, hey, man, I tried it. Maybe it didn't go that way, but hey, at least I tried it, and I'm not going to have that regret ever in my life.
Yeah, that's the kind of hindsight you want is, I tried, and like you said, it's not a failure necessarily, but it's I worked on it, and I was able to kind of check it off my list and figure out that, it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, you have the Drawing Academy, of course, but you also have a YouTube series, which is amazing. And for anybody that listens to this podcast and gets inspired by it, I highly recommend you check it out. Can you talk about your art talks on YouTube a little bit?
Yeah, so every Monday morning I have a new art talk, and what that is just a real sort of, I want it to be just a pick-me-upper, just motivation, inspiration, discussing. It's not just about the animation industry, it's about art in general. It's about, covers just a lot of things which I believe in is just artists valuing their artwork and not just giving it away, and that covers all facets of creativity. And understanding what that is, but just my journey and my experiences and really tapping into that just to help people understand that, hey, you're not alone out there in this creative field, that it's going to be up to you. It's about your drive, your perseverance, your effort that you're going to be putting into your work. And that's what it comes down to. So the real heart of it is just all about, hey, don't give up. Just try. And that's what the conversation's really all about. They're not long talks by any means. They may only go from anywhere from 10 minutes to 20 minutes long, but it's just the sort of reaction or mindset that I'm in for that week.
Yeah, it's a perfect little shot of inspiration, like a really good motivational tool. So definitely check that out. It's youtube.com/silvertunes. Stephen, it's time for the final push, and this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today that's thinking, maybe I need to find out what it is that I need to do. Maybe I need to get back to my work. And just give them your best advice and really push them to pursue their creative passions.
Yeah, I think my advice really is just dig and search and find out what that thing is that you do love and enjoy, and don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to fail. Experiment, explore, just give yourself a schedule, just write down, just really start setting goals for yourself. Stop worrying about the future and the outcomes of the future, because you cannot control that. It's all going to be just up to you and what you make of it. And that's what it really just comes down to is have fun and enjoy the time that you have on this journey and this planet.
I love it. Stephen, man, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course. And you can find Stephen on his website, which is silvertunes.com. On Facebook, he is Steven Silver. And again, on YouTube, youtube.com/silvertunes. And you can find out all the links we talked about today, including everywhere else to find him at yourcreativepush.com/Steven Silver. And that's Steven with a PH. Stephen, thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
Wow. That was such a powerful episode. I just want to say thank you to Aurora for pointing Stephen's YouTube channel out to me, and for suggesting that I reach out to him, because I loved this conversation. Remember the tremendous power in asking, not just your friends, but professionals. The very worst thing that can happen is no response at all, which guess what is what you would have gotten had you asked nothing. And then it's just so important to listen to what they say. Don't just hear a no. Don't just hear a rejection. Don't just hear negative words coming out about your art, about whatever creative thing it is that you do. You ask them. So listen and gain something from what they have to say. And yeah, I totally agree with what Stephen said about the word failure. It should be stricken from our language, honestly. The finality of that word is really overwhelming and scary, and we shouldn't look at the end result of our trying as anything but a success. It might not have worked out the way that we wanted or the way that we foresaw, but the whole fucking purpose of life is to try, and if you are trying, then you are a big winner, in my opinion. You are braver than most of the people out there who sit on their asses not trying. And if you've picked up the pen or the paintbrush or the keyboard or the microphone or whatever else is your, ammunition in your creative endeavor, and you've made one brushstroke or sung one note or typed one word and made one little tiny step towards creative fulfillment, then you are already winning, and everything else is just gravy. It's just trying to figure out which direction that you're going to end up going. That's what the purpose of trying is. And when you look at it that way, almost nothing is a failure. The only failure that you can possibly have is to have this inspiration inside of you, to have this thing, this creative calling, and do nothing about it. To not take any steps towards getting it out of you. And if you're going for it in any slight way, you are a huge winner in my book. And you have to keep going. You have to keep taking steps towards that fulfillment, and just take failure out of the dialogue. Failure is not a word you should be thinking about anymore, because as long as you are trying, then you are winning. So go do work. Hopefully today you're inspired to go and get your work done, so please go and get it done. Have a great couple of days, and we will see you on Monday if you need the push again. Bye, everybody. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.